So sit comfortably. Spine straight, erect. Chin slightly tucked in. You know what the reason for that is? It helps to keep the spine straight. Eyes slightly open. Tongue touching the upper palate. Hands on your lap, hopefully thumbs touching. Relax your body. After all that, you might say, how can I relax with all that? And relax your mind. And put your attention on your respiration to the exclusion of everything else. Once you recognize the respiration, you can follow through holding the mental factor of mindfulness on that. Place your mindfulness on the breathing in front. Slightly more challenging point is at the juncture between inhalation and exhalation, or exhalation and inhalation. When the breathing slows down, you have to watch carefully. Let go of paying attention to the internal mental chatter, the monkey-like mind. And if you have a little success in calming the mind that way, now take the more subtle object of the mental consciousness itself as your object of focus. Let go of watching the breathing. You can even begin with a memory of how the mind has apprehended itself before, the clear light nature of the mind, remembering consciousness of that. Or just start from scratch. There's a sense of openness of the mind within which thoughts are arising and disappearing. And it's upon that which we want to focus rather than the substance of the thoughts. Let them dissipate. Focus on the conventional nature of that spaciousness, that lack of obstruction to consciousness, rather than the substance of the objective thoughts. Not just a state of mind that has no thoughts, although that the conceptualizing mind will be much lessened now, but recognizing this as our developmental Buddha nature, conventional Buddha nature. Usually we say the ultimate Buddha nature is the emptiness of this mind. Here we're just watching its conventional nature, that it does not present any obstacle to content arising in the mind or content dissolving back into consciousness, disappearing from the mind. We can get rid of our faults. We can develop all the qualities that we admire: wisdom, confidence, compassion, patience. Courage. We can develop a sense of letting go of the appearance, letting go to our attachment to the appearances of this life, a sense of renunciation. Our mind is no different in nature than Shakyamuni Buddha's mind was when he began his quest to achieve enlightenment. Not an iota of difference in nature. We can become Buddha for the sake of others. Recognizing that all living beings have this same potential, clear light nature of our mind, whether it be clouded now by suffering, attention to the individual details of our conventional lives, not seeing the whole picture, living beings that are under the influence of ignorance, fueling their emotions, their klesha, their afflicted states of mind. All of them, all living beings have been intimately related with us over numberless lifetimes in the past, since time immemorial, time without limit. We've sometimes seen them as friends, sometimes as enemies, often just indistinctly as strangers. They all have helped us, been our friend, our mothers, benefited us in so many ways as objects of our practice of ethics and morality, as objects of our acts of charity and generosity, allowing us to create merit. All of them are yet enmeshed in cyclic existence, suffering manifestly, even our moments of samsaric happiness are of the nature of suffering, contaminated and not real happiness. Developing a sense of identity, equality with them, warming our minds toward them, thinking how wonderful it could be, will be, if I could lead them out of suffering into a state of enlightenment. To do that, I myself, to lead them perfectly, I myself have to achieve that state. Otherwise, it would be a case of the blind trying to lead the blind. I need to open my eye of wisdom to achieve enlightenment in order to help sentient beings. So with that intention as our guide, think that I'm going to participate after this meditation in the class this morning, our meeting this morning, with the ultimate purpose of achieving enlightenment for the sake of others, and listening in order to open my wisdom eye, learning more about Buddhism, reviewing that which I already know, putting it in perspective, contemplating, and meditating as a bodhisattva activity, accumulating merit and wisdom for that end goal, emulating the activities of the bodhisattvas and the Buddhas. I'm going to participate this morning in order to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. Overcome my prejudices, my favoritism for friends, and disregard for who I view as enemies. How wonderful it would be if I could generate that state. Joyfully, fearlessly working for the sake of all living beings. Not just idealistically, but with realization, knowing how to lead them. And then bring your attention back to the present. Okay, set a motivation. And as Doris raises her hand, I was just about to say, if anyone has any comments or observations or questions. Yeah, Doris.
Thank you, Venerable. You, paraphrasing, you said, if you're ever remembering consciousness about the clear light nature of the mind, use that or start from scratch. So can you elaborate on that? Because it sounds like a good jumping point if I can capture that.
Right. Yeah. So in the Prasangika system of philosophy, which, if you remember the various Buddhist philosophical schools, the highest school in general is called Madhyamaka, the middle way. And amongst the Madhyamakas, the pinnacle of the view of reality is called the consequentialist school, or the Prasangika school. So from that point of view, it's said that if we have an insight into something, let's say a realization of something, like say the clear light nature of the mind, even if it's not a deep realization, a memory of that can bring back that same state. In fact, they would say that, Prasangika would say that even if you've realized emptiness, let's say, directly, and then you arise from that, if you can bring back a remembering consciousness of that, which is still conceptual, it counts as a direct perception of emptiness. They would say that there are some conceptual consciousnesses, like remembering consciousness of emptiness, which are categorized as direct perceptions. Seems contradictory. Direct perception seems to be contradictory to conceptual mind. Conceptual mind is when you're thinking about something with a mental image. But that particular kind of consciousness, a remembering consciousness, is said to have great value. So say, for instance, when we're saying prayers, I go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and the highest assembly until I'm enlightened. Sangye Chudang Suki Chogna Ma Jangchu Bardu Dagni Kapsuchi. If you have meditated on refuge before in detail and had some confidence, some faith in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha as perfect refuges, for perfect aids to protect one from suffering, simply saying those words can bring back that remembering consciousness, rather than just, casually saying them and thinking that, and of course there's some value in just saying them, but if you can bring back the remembering consciousness of the meaning of those words, that becomes much more powerful. When I've given some talks on the glance meditation on the Lan Rim. I don't know if I did it. Was it here at Thupten Norberling, or maybe it was in New York City on the glance meditation. Every one of those meditations, saying the words, if you've meditated in detail upon those topics before, simply saying the words can bring back that remembering consciousness of that. And you have an incredible panoramic view of the whole path, bringing everything into interconnectedness, all of the various stages of the path. So here, when I mentioned, say, you begin to meditate on the clear light nature of the mind. If you have had some experience of that in the past that you've dwelled on, left an imprint in the mind, try to bring back a recollection of that, a memory of that as your starting point. And then you can go into more detail. From that starting point, you can start to recognize the various thoughts that are in your mind as like clouds in an otherwise clear sky, and let go of your attention to them, let them begin to dissipate so that you have an even deeper experience of that. Does that make sense, Doris?
Yes, it does. I think I'll still have to start from scratch, though.
So at a certain point, that's one of the features of the mind, that it can be developed infinitely. So for instance, unlike a high jumper, like a vault, in the Olympics where this long pole, has anyone ever done anything like that? I've never done vault. You have? Okay, Doris. Okay, that's a good example. So you're asking. So
I got stabbed by the pole and I gave up.
Okay. So every time you run down the ramp with the pole and you put it in some slot, I guess, and you vault up, you have to put new effort, even though you might, by the force of familiarity, you might be able to go a little bit higher, due to practice or new methods or strengthening your muscles and everything. Still, you have to put new effort each time. Whereas the mind is different. The mind doesn't have to start from scratch each time. Once you've developed certain understandings in the mind, you can enhance them and go develop greater empathy for others, greater compassion, greater wisdom, and so forth. It's one of the hallmarks of our ability to achieve enlightenment, that the mind doesn't have to go back every time. We don't have to go back to the very beginning and go over every detail again, although that's often useful, like starting from scratch. But once you've reached a certain understanding and you go have your tea and you come back, you can just bring back the memory of that where you were before. Unlike when you're vaulting, you can't just say, oh, I'm already at 20 feet, now I'm going to go to 21. I don't know, is that exaggeration? Is that high? I can't even remember how high people can vault. Make sense?
Yes, thank you, Venerable. I'll have to see where I am and kind of from there.
Yeah. Of course, sometimes you have to, if it's not just you've gone down for tea and you come back and you can sort of continue that meditation. If it's a couple days or a week later or something like that, you might have to rehearse the stages to get up there. But then you can kind of enhance that with your memory of the your understanding of that, realization of that. That's called a remembering consciousness. What do some of the others of you think about that particular thing? Does that gel with your understanding? David, what do you think? David Kennedy?
Yeah, I think I've had that experience that you're talking about. I guess I haven't paid a lot of attention to it, but I recognize what you're saying.
Okay. Anyone else have a comment about that? Any other excuse me, any other questions? or comments or observations? Yes, Ida.
I just wanted to say that I realized that that's what I've been doing, you know, with the family and things happening. Sometimes I have to pause my meditation, take care of a detail, and come back and not necessarily start from the beginning, but, you know, continue. And I'm using what you're saying, that remembering consciousness. Thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, so that's useful to know. And okay, so this is our last session on the three principles of the path, or three principal aspects of the path, however you'd like to translate it. Geshe Sherab, as I understand, will begin continuing his guidance next Sunday. Is that right, Shanka? That's the plan right now? Yeah. So we're going to just, finish up and review the text today. And so in that regard, I want to reread what I read last time on in this particular translation. Verse 14, one could say there's 14 and a half. You could say this is the last verse because there's just a colophon after this. It says, when you have correctly understood the essentials of these three principal paths. Here the word aspect doesn't even come in, these three principal paths. So what are these three principal paths? Renunciation, bodhicitta, and the wisdom that realizes emptiness, the corrective view of emptiness. When you have correctly understood the essentials of these three principal paths, child, that's not talking down like, like child, but affectionately, like my, from the point of view of Lama Tzong Khapa, as the Buddha himself referred to ordinary beings as childlike sometimes, in the sense that we don't yet have a correct understanding. We're still kind of infantile, but here more affectionately. When you have correctly understood the essentials of these three principal paths, child, seek seclusion and strengthen your effort to swiftly accomplish your future well-being. So I find this very, very tasty because I know one of our members has mentioned to me recently they're planning on doing maybe 10 years of meditation or many years of retreat, which I think is exemplary. From my own experience, having done a little bit of meditation in the last, 6 years or so, there are great benefits to seeking seclusion and strengthening our effort in accomplishing our future well-being. What does that mean? Our future well-being, our future, our past is infinite. Our future also is infinite. If we put no effort in changing our mind, changing our ways, we will remain in cyclic existence. We will play the same games again and again. We'll fall in love, we'll, aspire to make money, we'll, get encumbered in the appearances of this lifetime. We'll suffer and we'll die, and we'll be born in the animal realm, in the hell realms, and the prater realms again and again. So to ensure our future well-being, accomplish our future well-being means to create the causes now karmically to have more pleasant experiences and resources in the future, to have a mind which already has a certain amount of, what would you say, coolness, is not so intensely preoccupied with the appearances of this lifetime, recognizing in perspective through renunciation and bodhicitta and wisdom that they are mere appearances, the residue of our past actions, so that we can put our effort into achieving a calm state of mind, a joyous state of mind, the state of a state of liberation and enlightenment, to accomplish our future well-being. When you have correctly understood the essentials of these three principal paths, as we've tried to do during this course, O child, O, dear one, seek seclusion. So what does seclusion mean? I think I might have mentioned before, I remember a book I read when I was younger, called The Journey to the East. Has anyone ever heard of that book? Shanko, who is it? Aldous Huxley, I think?
Yeah, and I think it's based on the Chinese, old Chinese, oh no, that's Journey to the West, never mind, but yes, Aldous Huxley.
Yeah. So I think it's even been made into a movie with an unlikely actor as the star. I can't remember, but Journey to the East is kind of like a metaphor of when we talked about renunciation, leaving where you are and going somewhere where you're away from the entanglements of this lifetime, of your earlier life, your family and friends and so forth, like in the 37 practices of the children of the Buddha, which means is an epithet, children of the Buddha. It's an epithet for the bodhisattvas, the offspring of the Buddhas. One of the verses says that the sons of the Buddha, the offspring of the Buddha, all practice this way. They leave behind their childhood place, and they go somewhere else in order to be away from the attachments and the petty angers and the competitions and the small mind. Here, when we say seek solution, it doesn't necessarily mean to go to a different place. It means to find that seclusion in your own mind, where you, having studied the teachings, that you can let go of the things that preoccupy you now. Seeking solutions, seclusion is even though you might say that it can be mental, it's still important to find some physical seclusion from the activities of everyday life. When you want to do a long retreat, you want to find a situation in which you don't have to worry about interacting with the neighbors. You find a place which is to do your retreat, which is quiet and peaceful, where there's clean and healthy water and food available. And to find that seclusion, also, you try to give up your sense of, intensification of attachment that doesn't feel satisfied with things. You want to find a state of satisfaction with whatever you have, and to be I'm forgetting the word. Complacent is not the right word. you want to feel that that everything you have is enough. That kind of seclusion. Child, seek seclusion. So find a situation where you can meditate in your basement or in your in a closet, or if you have a room you can dedicate to your meditation, place that you can come and feel comfortable, and maybe even the remembering consciousness of that, coming into that room already puts you at ease. There's an image of the Buddha, your teachers, a representation of the Buddha's teachings, scriptures on your altar, something that represents the Buddha's omniscient mind, such as a stupa. Setting up an altar room like that, finding seclusion from the ordinary activities of life. And within that, meditate. Strengthen your effort to I have to put on my glasses here, to swiftly accomplish your future well-being. So if you could do a retreat this year, this month, maybe a weekend, maybe a week, maybe one of your vacations, you can plan ahead, even though if you didn't plan ahead, you might be tempted to go off and, vegetate in front of the TV, or go to Cancun or the Bahamas or something. Dedicate a vacation, a week or month to meditation, or make a plan in this lifetime. Wow, when I retire, I will do a 3-year retreat. That can be the basis to find incredible peace of mind, and it can be the basis to actually make great advances in your spiritual progress, your realizations. Scanning the whole path, with a glance meditation on the whole path, and going through all of the stages again and again, not just with only a remembering consciousness, like Doris was saying, but we were talking about before, but going through all the stages of the path, seeing the interconnectedness of the various realizations, putting effort, concentrating with better and better motivation as you go along, and ensuring your future well-being, like that. So that's the last verse of the text. So in essence, we've talked about these 3 principles that are the hallmarks, sort of like the high points of spiritual realization from the Mahayana point of view. When I say from the Mahayana point of view, because generally in the Hinayana tradition, bodhicitta is not something that is necessarily cultivated. In the Hinayana tradition, there's still a cultivation of love and compassion, and working for the sake of sentient beings this lifetime. That's a hallmark of all Buddhist traditions. But there's not the sense of developing the aspiration to become perfect, to become enlightened for the sake of all sentient beings. I think a lot of Christians or Jews or Muslims, if you were to ask their child what they wanted to be in the future, if that child were to say, I want to become God, what would that would be? What would that be? Apostasy, or what's the heavy spiritual term of criticism for that, like hubris or something like that? You can't become
Heresy?
God. Was a heresy, yeah, that would be heresy or something. But for a Buddhist child, this, if you were asked a Buddhist child, what would you like to be when you grow up? I'd like to become Buddha. We would say, oh, wonderful. That would be wonderful. So the different philosophical view it doesn't, it's not said to become Buddha doesn't mean that you're going to be the big wig. You're going to be the top boss and boss other people around or control other people. But it's a sense of trying to better ourselves for the sake of others. So let's go back over these three principles as a review today. The first principle of the path is the mind of renunciation. Let me ask. It's Deirdre's here. Deirdre, I don't know if you're actually online or if it's just your photo up there. Do you have? Can you give me a definition of renunciation? There's Deirdre.
Yeah, renunciation would be surrendering all your worldly attachments, things, people, places, things. You're a renunciate.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Sort of. What did you say? What was the word you used about the attachments?
Well, you have to give up all your worldly things. I mean, real things, spiritual, people, places, things.
So when the corner community center asks for donations for the poor, you empty out all of the things that you're attached to, your TV, your iPod, your car, the groceries from the shelves. You get rid of everything you're attached to?
I think that would be like, kind of stupid compassion, because then I'd have to go and beg for food from somebody else.
Right.
So I'm more realistic than that. One does need to eat, but I think of a renunciate. I mean, a renunciate, if you're doing a retreat in a cave, you really have renounced everything, but you still need to eat. So some of the things that go through your mind, you also need to renounce. So I think of renouncing as, I guess I do think of it as being a little more structured for, ordained people. I mean, those of us in the world have to try to do some of that, but.
Okay. So that's talking about it in kind of like a meld of Buddhism and sort of worldly meaning of renunciation. Here, the meaning of renunciation is a thought that has, first of all, recognized the suffering nature of cyclic existence, how it is all-encompassing. No matter what situation you might find yourself in, it is not going to be really satisfying. It's not going to bring you any real happiness. And intensifying that to the thinking about the extreme sufferings, let's say, of the lower realms, of the hells that we have experienced numberless times in the past and will experience probably in the future, the suffering of the hungry ghosts, the pretas, lacking, not being able to find what they want in a very visceral way, animals under the domination of fighting with others constantly for survival, being prey to other animals and insects and so forth, being under the domination of humans, not having clarity of mind to meditate or to develop higher senses. Although your poodles and certain dogs, some people will say, oh, the dogs act better than humans. Generally, the general situation of the animal realm is one of suffering. then extending that within the understanding of our lives, that there is nothing that we ordinarily aim for, wealth, pleasure of the senses, power, domination and so forth, being pleased, being praised, being being popular and so forth. None of these things will bring any kind of real sustained happiness. They're not real happiness. So it's beginning to develop a mind of renunciation means first seeing the shortcomings of cyclic existence. So that the alternative doesn't mean that you have to become a monastic. Deirdre was saying, that maybe the real renunciation, that's for the monastics.
Well,
You want to take that back? Yeah, no, good.
I have to say one thing that when so renunciation for monastics is kind of the big idea for me, but I really like it. And if I hadn't have been struggling so hard to try and give the right answer, I probably would have said this. But as a householder working in my day-to-day job, crazy attorneys and stuff, I find the mental or psychological, emotional renunciation in my life right now to be much more powerful. I mean, it's really where the work is. And, especially like I've had to really renunciate reputation and I've really had reputation grasping just when I make a mistake. Okay, I'm not trying to become the boss or anything. It's that simple. So I really like that. I find that really, really where the meat of it is for those of us who aren't going to renounce. I mean, like the world, become a
Monastic or
monastic. Thank you.
Or a hermit or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that not like Milarepa wasn't necessarily a monastic. He was, you could maybe say he was a hermit, but he certainly had that sense of renunciation. So that's just one side of renunciation. The other side of renunciation is seeing a bright side of this. It's not like just giving up all these things maybe we see as noble, but renunciation also has the sense of this Tibetan word tardo, which is, I'd mentioned there's a common Tibetan name that's given to people. There was one Geshe Tardo that used to live next to University of Virginia in Charlottesville, where was it Jeffrey Hopkins and so forth, and amongst all that scholastic excellence in everything, the Tibetan studies. Tardo means desiring liberation. Tarpa means liberation. Moksha in Sanskrit. Moksha, desiring moksha. Moksha is not mocha, remember? Mocha is that chocolate coffee. Moksha means liberation. So renunciation also has an aspect to it that realizes that we can escape from all of these problems. It's something that informs, so we see cyclic existence as problematic, as inferior, as the nature of suffering. But we see that there is a solution, that we can get out of that constant games that we play in lifetime. And it doesn't mean that you have to remove yourself from society. Renunciation doesn't necessarily mean that you have to become a hermit or a monastic. And I think this is what Deirdre's probably aspiring for, to find that state where you can be, like in Christianity, we say being in the world, but not of the world. Because that's from a bodhisattva point of view, that's the deeper sense of renunciation. to not be buffeted by our experiences in the world, not to get as angry as we have been in the past, to not be as attached, but to be able to function in the world, continuing to develop our mind so that we can benefit others. So renunciation is like a two-sided coin. When we talked about it before, it's like in Italian, they talk about situations like this when you say the two sides of a coin. They say the due facce de medaglia, something like that. Is anyone can correct my Italian? Anyone know Italian? The two faces of the medallion, the two sides of the coin. So one side sees cyclic existence in general as the nature of suffering. And the other side would like to escape, has the desire to escape from that, knowing that there is a state of liberation. That's what we call nirvana, right? Moksha is, in a certain sense, is synonymous with nirvana. Nirvana doesn't mean that you no longer exist. Nirvana, the state of an arhat, is not necessarily a state when you no longer exist. It's a state in which you no longer are buffeted by your afflictions and delusions. We talk about nirvana with remainder and without remainder, but Amanda, you have a comment, question.
So they're the first two noble truths then, are they?
Yes. So the first two noble truths, the truth of suffering and
The recognition of suffering.
Recognition of the suffering nature of all of cyclic existence. There's nothing out there that's within cyclic existence that's going to bring you any real pleasure. And recognizing the cause of that is the second noble truth, the origination of suffering. Where does that arise? It arises directly from karma, and the karma, it arises from our afflictions, karma and klesha. So recognizing that, also the other side of renunciation has to do with the other two noble truths also, the truth of cessation and the truth of the path. The truth of cessation from the point of view of renunciation means you can get out of cyclic existence. There is a state of liberation, moksha or nirvana, which can be achieved, in which you are no longer encumbered by any of the delusions. From our understanding of emptiness, that means having realized deeper and deeper meaning of emptiness as the root cause, that wisdom then is able to de-enfranchise our delusions. They no longer have any foothold because there's no longer a sense of, you've realized there's no inherently existent person there. There's no inherently existent Deirdre. There's no inherently existent husband, Shanga. So that, can I use that, de-enfranchises the afflictions. They eventually begin to subside. And when we've realized emptiness directly, we can cease the delusion so that they'll never come back. Right now, we're dealing on the level of conceptual understanding of emptiness. And on that level, we can cause the delusions to subside, maybe so they don't even show up much at all. We seem like a Buddha, we seem like a saint, but the imprints of them are still there so that in future lives they may manifest more grossly. But once we've realized emptiness directly, we can achieve that state of cessation. And the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, is the method. This is what we're talking about here. Seek solution seek seclusion and strengthen your effort to swiftly accomplish your future well-being. That means following the path that leads to that. So the true path from the point of view of our studies means the realization of emptiness, the direct realization of emptiness, you know, all of the stages that lead up to that, and the accumulation of merit and the purification of negative karma. So renunciation, I found in my own experience, even in the long retreat, although I would spend a lot of time meditating on bodhicitta, compassion, you know, and the fact that enlightenment is possible as factors to enhance, meditating a lot on emptiness. Most glaring thing that we have to work on is renunciation. Understanding what it really means. It doesn't mean just giving up everything. It means recognizing the futility of something that you were attached to before. Once you understand all the problems involved in it, it's easier to give it up, right? If you still have some lingering attachment to some physical belonging, it seems like you're pulling your heart out to give it up. But if you understand the shortcomings of it, that it's never brought you any real pleasure and it's only a pile of pain, then it's easy to give it up. So you have to understand the shortcomings of cyclic existence, the shortcomings of again becoming famous, again becoming wealthy, again, you know, hearing sweet ego-pleasing words and sounds, again having pleasures of the senses, the shortcomings of that. Then it's easier to, on the conventional level, to let go of those things. That allows you then the space to work on your mind to make these deeper realizations. You also have to, the other side of renunciation, one side seeing the suffering nature of cyclic existence, the other side seeing there is a solution. There is a state of cessation. There is a state of liberation. So we talked about that over several weeks, but just to see it again and to think about it again. Yeah, Jamie.
Thanks, Benji. I was wondering if there's something that I can read or do just to stop myself hearing any kind of sense of punishment and reward when we talk about the hell realms and the hungry ghosts, etc. And this is like, I say this with like such an open heart, because most days I'm like, I have total faith and total belief, and it makes so much sense to me. And then occasionally, if sometimes, for example, I'll hear His Holiness say something like, all religion is created by human beings, and any religion that helps make a good human being, you know, create a good heart, you know, inspire good ethics. It makes me think sometimes, oh, this is just a really cool way, really awesome way of inspiring really good ethics, and it really works. But I want to understand it on a deeper level so that I know the truth of it, as opposed to just a kind of tool for renunciation in this life. Because I feel the benefits of that renunciation in this life, but I want to understand it moving forward, you know, long term. And I just wonder if there's any way of kind of reading more. Maybe it's also understanding specifically karma, so that I understand that there are results, for, you know, as a result of certain actions. But I suppose the missing thing for me in terms of understanding is how that happens. You know, like it's not, I can understand this thing will lead to this thing, and I'll hear the teachings of that and it will make sense. But why is that? How does that happen? Is it to do with the wind energies? How does it, you know, is it like a kind of, maybe it's just an understanding of that will help me.
So I remember one time when Lama Zopa Rinpoche was giving some advice to me, he said, you should read the section in, I was one famous Tibetan Lama's writings, I think Kuntang Rinpoche, anyway, on karma, you know, to really to understand that. Karma is a very, very important understanding to have, but because the exact connection between actions and their results is not apparent, I mean, it's a little bit inherent from what you're saying, it's difficult to develop, well, say, to realize it directly. You can't necessarily know how one particular action you do will have a particular result in the future. You can kind of develop faith that it will have some positive result, especially when you feel good about giving or you feel good about restraining from some negative action. You have a feeling that it will have some salutary, some beneficial effect in the future. Did you guys heard of Ram Dass, Baba Ram Dass? Some of the older people, maybe some of the, Nadine, you may be too young to remember Baba Ram Dass.
I have heard the name, yes.
Yeah. Ram Dass wrote a book called Be Here Now. Who's read Be Here Now? Oh, only Charlene and I? Shanka, you never read Be Here Now?
I have.
Deirdre has.
Deirdre has. Oh, okay. Deirdre, okay.
I have a license plate that says, I'd rather be here now.
Oh, how nice. Please take a photo of it and send it to me sometime.
I will.
So Baba Ram Dass was an American guy. I can't remember where he's from, Brooklyn or someplace, wasn't he? He went to India and emulated the sadhus. Do you know what sadhus are? Sadhus are a term used in the Vedic religions. They say Hinduism to refer to, it's kind of like renunciates. They would not wear ordinary clothes. They would wear very simple clothes. They would live oftentimes near the Ganges, hang out together, do spiritual practices. Sometimes from a Buddhist point of view, practices that would not necessarily lead to liberation, like standing on one leg for years, or sitting in meditation amongst fires that were placed around you, thinking that would purify your negative karma, your suffering, constant suffering. Anyway, Ram Dass, after he came back to the West, he was, I think at one point, he was very much involved with Timothy Leary in the LSD movement and everything like that. You probably know the stories about that. He went to India. And he came back and started a prison project to help people that were in prison. One of the books that he wrote for the prisoners, I thought one of the sections on karma was very interesting. He said, karma is a little bit like, the underwiring is very difficult to understand. Like in a house, you turn on the switch and the light goes on. You can kind of see there's some causal connection. But it's difficult to know the wiring, where the wire, where did it go? That's a little bit like Jamie's question about, what's the causal reasoning for karma? We can develop an appreciation, a deeper and deeper appreciation for karma from the Buddha's explanations. Particular actions will lead to particular results. We can take that on face value, but where the real faith in karma comes about, the great scholars, the teachers of Buddhism say, where real faith in karma comes about is when one realizes emptiness, have an insight into emptiness, something which is a hidden phenomena that no one else explained, no other teachers, Jesus Christ, Muhammad, Moses, who was it? I can't remember the famous Confucius, or I can't remember the famous Chinese, the other famous
Lao Tzu.
Lao Tzu, anyone never talked about emptiness. Deep, liberating phenomena that one can understand. Once you have an experience of that and you realize the kindness of the Buddha in teaching that hidden phenomena, you can realize that there was no reason for him to have, no reason for his own fame or ulterior motive in lying about karma. Karma, the actual connection between actions and their results, are said to be deeply hidden. Only an omniscient mind can see the actual causal relationship between a particular karmic action and its exact result. You can know in general that good actions will bring about beneficial results, and that negative actions, you can get even a great confidence that negative actions will have negative results for you, suffering results for you in the future. Sometimes you might think instant karma, you hit someone and then they hit you back and you think, oh yeah, that shows karma. That doesn't show karma so much. But anyway, if you have some insight into emptiness, Dharmakirti said, when he talked, he didn't use the word emptiness, but he talked selflessness. Once you've realized selflessness to some degree, you develop an incredible appreciation for the Buddha as a perfect teacher who taught this liberating concept, liberating ability that we can have. And then you develop a greater confidence in his teachings about other phenomena, which are more easily understood, like the existence of past and future lives. You can talk about that, it makes sense conceptually, but you don't necessarily have faith in it. But once you've realized selflessness, you have tremendous faith that the Buddha did not deceive us in these other phenomena, so that you are even more careful about observing karma. Observing karma, remember, doesn't mean, oh yeah, that's karma, like just observing something. It means protecting karma, making sure that you don't create negative karma because you know that it will have negative consequences, that it acts as an impediment to realizations when you have karmic obscurations in your mind. Lama Zopa Rinpoche said that contrary to what some people think that once you've realized emptiness, you don't have to worry about karma. Rinpoche said that when you realize emptiness, you're even more careful about karma because you have that confidence that the Buddha was not deceiving us when he taught about causes and effects, because he taught us this incredibly liberating phenomena that no one else taught. And you realize that in order to help other sentient beings, you want to eliminate all the obstructions in your mind to making realizations. There are karmic obscurations in our mind now to us actualizing empathy and compassion for others. There are karmic obscurations in our mind to us being careful about karma and so forth. And all of these can be removed as we purify negative karma, as we understand more about it. We apply the opponent forces. All of the great lamas that I know always are, every day they apply the opponent forces, the four opponent forces to negative karma. They may do the confession sutra to the Buddha, 35 Buddhas, making prostrations. They may recite more short prayers, or they meditate on the four opponent forces, feeling great regret when they commit negative karma. Atisha, Jamie, you've heard of Atisha, who came to Tibet and who taught the famous text there called the Lamp of the Path to Enlightenment. That's sort of the prototype of all of the Lan Rims. Atisha, when he was on his way to Tibet, would stop the caravan. You could call it a caravan. What would we call it nowadays? I don't know. We'd even say, I guess we even use that when we talk about explorers going to the North Pole or something like that, with many trucks. But he would stop the horses and the camels or whatever they were riding on, and he would get off. He would take his stupa that he carried with him all the time, that's representative of the Buddha's omniscient mind, and he would apply the four opponent forces to the negative actions that he created, in the days previously. He said that for him, after many years of practice, there would be some infractions of the pratimoksha vows that he would inadvertently have created. But he was a great renunciate, so there were very, very few of those. There were more infractions of the bodhisattva vows because it's more difficult to keep. In fact, the defining characteristic of having broken the bodhisattva vows is having an instant of self-cherishing thought. It's not just like some gross thing you could say, oh, I argued with or I did something gross like that, but just having an instant of self-cherishing thought is said to be an infraction of the bodhisattva vows. So he would purify that and renew those vows. And he said that the infractions of the tantric vows were like, constant rain, even having a moment of impure view is said to be an infraction of the tantric vows. So this all involves karma, right? That it's said that any karmic obscurations that we have act as impediment to making realizations. So in regard to this, the great teacher Kyabje Ling Rinpoche once said, he told this story. I mean, this is not just his own story, but it's from the Buddhist scriptures, but I remember hearing from him. When in the time of the Buddha, some of the younger monks were having difficulty making realizations. Well, of course, they were playing, they were swimming, and not spending their time doing things. But even when they did study and practice, they were having difficulty making realizations. And the Buddha told Shariputra that he should have them perform the bi-monthly confession to purify negative karma, which is in Tibetan we call sojong. I don't know, you may not know that word. Sojong is a ritual, I think in Sanskrit it's called pushada, that the monastics do every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, there is a sojong or prasada where the community comes together, all the monastics come together, and they, in the time of the Buddha, they would announce any infractions of their vows to others. Nowadays, because people, reputations, they're so concerned with our own, it's very difficult to say that I lied or I had bad thoughts about boys or girls or something like this. So nowadays, it's meant that you open up in your mind, you accept that you've created negative karma, and you listen to a recitation of the Pratimoksha Sutra, the sutra that Buddha taught on the vows of individual liberation and karma, karmic causes and effects. And you try to reaffirm your renunciation. So the Buddha told Shariputra to take these monks that weren't making realizations to do this. And immediately afterwards, they were able to increase their understanding and their realizations. So it's said that purifying negative karma is one of the most important factors in making realizations. Of course, accumulating merit and purifying negative karma. So this is getting back to your question, just in general about karma, not the particular question you asked about how to understand the connection between the two. It's said that amongst the various negative karmas we create, the greatest obstacles to realization are created by infractions to the vows that we've taken. So maybe you know the Ganden Lagema. Do you know that name, Ganden Lagema? What do we call it in Shanka? What is it called?
In English?
In English. The Ganden Lagema. The Ganden means Tushita. And
yeah, I can't remember either.
so it's the 8-verse short puja to Lama Tzong Khapa. It's, it says, you visualize in the space in front of you, Lama Tzong Khapa coming from Tushita on a cloud that resembles a pile of fresh yogurt, curd, and beside him, his 2 disciples, and you make the 7-limb puja and so forth. One of the verses in there of the 7-limb puja says that, I confess all the negative karma I've created since beginning this time, especially infractions to the 3 vows, the pratimoksha vows, bodhisattva vows, and the tantric vows, because those negative karmas act as impediments to our making realizations. So it's very, very important to purify those. So as to the actual mechanism of karma, how it's continued, that's a large philosophical question in all of the philosophical schools. Some schools saw it as an actual, like a seed that you place within your mental continuum that will remain, and this is a good analogy, even though it may not be exactly right, that will remain on your consciousness in a dormant state, but still kind of getting more and more potent over time until the right conditions arise for that karmic seed to actually sprout and give its result as either a pleasurable or unpleasurable experience in the future, or in some cases as an actual rebirth, which rebirth is not called pleasurable or unpleasurable, although it has moments of pleasure and suffering within it. You can have throwing karma that ripens that way. So that's a mechanism that's kind of accepted in general, although in the Prasangika, it's much more subtle than that, the relationship between actions and their results. When you create an action, it leaves some kind of imprint within your continuum that doesn't become, like if I go to my basement, I have a bunch of seeds I bought for my garden maybe 6 years ago. If I plant those now, if any of them grow, they'll be a little, kind of just meager and so forth, right? You know what I mean? They become impotent over time, less potent. Karmic seeds are not like that. they don't get rotten in your mind. You know, you did something and you think, oh, it's so long ago, don't worry about it. It's, in fact, it has become stronger, more potent over time. And that is the analogy that's often used to explain the connection between causes and their effects. Okay, I'm going to leave it at that, although that may not have answered your question completely. And I'm going to quickly just review a little bit about bodhicitta and emptiness again, because we talked about these three principles during this course. So bodhicitta is a particular state of mind that is not exactly compassion. It's not just the wish to become Buddha, but it is a state of mind that has been influenced by both of those factors. Compassion is the wish that sentient beings be free of suffering. Having understood the possibility of achieving enlightenment that we ourselves can bring about that we can lead sentient beings out of suffering into happiness. When you have both understandings together, then the desire that I myself must become a Buddha in order to alleviate the suffering of sentient beings. That state of mind that's influenced by those is called bodhicitta. Bodhi means enlightenment, citta means mind. And there's some debate, although generally in the Gelugpa tradition, we say that bodhicitta is a primary mental consciousness. It's not a mental factor. It's not just the desire that sentient beings be free. It's not just the desire to achieve enlightenment, our own enlightenment, to bring that about, but is said to be just the state of mind, the mere mental consciousness that is influenced by those. That's called bodhicitta. And that particular state of mind is said to be accumulate vast amount of merit. When we during our course, I read some verses from Kundalama Rinpoche's praise of bodhicitta, how it is the greatest purifier of negative karma and the greatest accumulator of virtuous karma. So when we do Tonglen meditation, taking on the suffering of others and sending out our own happiness and virtues and possessions and so forth for the benefit of others, with that bodhicitta motivation, that's said to be one of the great spiritual actions, practices of the bodhisattvas. Of course, applying the four opponent forces, but one of those opponent forces is when, what is when we talk about the four opponent forces, I'm not sure who I can ask. Victor, do you know the four opponent forces of negative karma?
Yeah, it's regret, the 4 R's. I just remembered.
Oh, okay, good. The 4 R's. Okay, regret.
Take refuge. Is that
refuge? Okay, yeah.
And you have the remedy.
Remedy. Oh, good. Okay,
and
there's
then
another R.
And the reframing at the end. Refrained or resolved.
Oh, resolve. Okay, good. Okay, so the one refuge is a little more encompassing. Is actually called that's very good, Victor. That one is actually includes bodhicitta. It's said to be the force of support. So that means if you fall into the ground, the analogy that's used, if you fall into the ground, you need to use the ground as a support to get up again. You push your hands down, or you put your feet on the ground and you push yourself up. So when you create negative karma with respect to the triple gem, the support that you have to rely on is taking refuge. If you've disparaged the triple gem in some way, you've disrespected your teachers or the Buddha or the Dharma, you abandoned the Dharma or the spiritual community, the way that you rectify that, the potent force is the force of refuge. But with respect to the other main field that we create karma with sentient beings, the support that you have to use is bodhicitta. We've created so many negative actions with respect to sentient beings, and the support that we can use is generating bodhicitta, thinking instead of working against them or retaliating or getting angry or being attached or jealous, we work for the welfare of sentient beings, generating the aspiration to achieve enlightenment for their welfare. So in addition to just the usual main opponent force of regret or remorse and the resolve not to do that negative action again, one of the most powerful ways is generating bodhicitta, working for the welfare of sentient beings. So doing tonglen is a very powerful way to purify obscurations. So we talked about renunciation, bodhicitta a little bit at review, and of course we've just talked recently about the wisdom of emptiness. Whether you're aiming for liberation from cyclic existence, or whether you're aiming for enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings, neither of those states can be achieved with just the motivation of renunciation alone or the motivation of bodhicitta alone. You need to have the wisdom that realizes emptiness of all phenomena. So, in that last verse, when you have correctly understood the essentials of these three principal paths, we talked a little bit now about all of them. Child, oh my child, seek seclusion and strengthen your effort to swiftly accomplish your future well-being. So my heartfelt advice to you is to find some time to do some meditation, some retreat, strengthen your effort to swiftly accomplish your future well-being. During that retreat, you can read, do glance meditation on the whole path, meditate on the individual elements, re-listen, reread teachings that you've heard before. Even during retreat, you can listen to new teachings. Doesn't mean, especially in this day and age when you can watch on YouTube or listen to a Zoom conference and like some of you have your picture off, you can listen and, spend your time that way. I remember when I was at Deer Park helping Geshe Zopa with the commentary he had given on the Lama Tzong Khapa's great text on emptiness, Gompa Rapsal. He was saying, oh, you could how wonderful it would be just to sit, and review the teachings, again and again. Geshe Zopa, there was recently an article, was it shared with this class? I don't think so. I think it was shared with the other class that was in Tricycle magazine about Geshe Zopa, who was in his mid-90s when he passed away. His last years, he was very much, not bedridden, but almost. And he would spend his time meditating all the time. And when he passed away, he remained in that, what we call tukdam, a meditative equipoise, even for days after his heart had stopped. There was no electrical activity of the brain. The mind was meditating on the clear light of death, the subtlemost mind meditating on emptiness. The body did not have any odor, did not start to, what's the usual word? When a body begins to decompose, right? Begins to smell and so forth for days afterwards. So that was a result of his lifetime of practice it's something that we can hopefully emulate. So with that, any last questions, any last thoughts? This is our last visit, and next Sunday, Geshe Sherab will begin. Any other last thoughts or comments? David?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I was listening to Ram Dass this morning.
Ah,
I just wanted to know your opinion on something he said. He said, this is from the 90s, the situation of the world is hopeless, but it's not serious. And I was just wondering what you thought about that from a perspective.
I would say it the opposite. It's serious, but not hopeless. But I'm not sure what he was thinking about there. Yeah, right now, you know, the Buddha prophesized that for the first 500 years after his passing, there would be a degeneration of the teachings, that the next 500 years after that, it would be more degenerate, and the next 500 years after that, more degenerate, and so forth. We're now in the kind of in what's commonly called the age of the 5 degenerations or 5 dregs. You know, the minds are more prone, the minds of sentient beings are more prone to delusions. You could just see the crazy ideas. I hope I'm not offending someone if I say the QAnon and things like this, you know, the things that people hold as true. Even simple things become weapons. You know, the resources become more, we have the dregs of the resources, you know, that the things, food and so forth become less nutritious, and the water becomes more polluted and so forth. And so in a certain sense, this is a natural outcome of the constant evolution, but things will get better eventually, maybe not within our lifetime. Maybe there'll be some little small blips, but what we can do, I think, ourselves, rather than trying to solve these big social issues right now, putting all our effort into protests or something like that, is to calm our minds, to control our minds, and to develop good qualities, eliminate our faults, so that we ourselves, as we continue, we can be exemplars, examples for others, how to react to these situations, that we don't react with anger and retaliation and so forth. Anyone else have a final thought or comment? So I didn't see everyone. I see the beautiful picture of Hillary, but I haven't seen her. Susie, Manuel, Christy. I hope all of you are well. Let's finish with some our dedication prayers.
But before we do that, Venerable, I have to do something.
Yes.
Okay, so Anna, why don't you?
Are you stuck? Okay.
Okay. Saji Bhaki Juksing Medo Tramrira Plingzi Ide Gapadi Sangye Jindu Mikte Uai Juk Namada Jinla Chopasho. Next line, the next page, Anna. May my Venerable Lama's life be firm, his white divine actions spread in the 10 directions. May the torch of the teachings of Lojang always remain, dispelling the darkness of all beings in the 3 realms. Idam Guru Ratna Manda Kam Niriyatayami. Thank you so much, Venerable.
It has been my honor, pleasure to substitute for Geshe Sherab in his absence, and I rejoice that he's coming back. So we'll just do these last dedication verses. Put back again, Anna. Due to the merits, to the virtues of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception to that enlightened state. May the supreme precious bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase even more and more. You, Lama Zopa, who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serves as bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine. You who masterfully accomplishes magnificent prayers honoring the 3 jewels. You, the savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. Oops, there we go. Wish granting, wish fulfilling jewel, source of every benefit and happiness in the world, incomparably kind Gyatso, may your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Venerable Tenzin Osel, to you whose kindness exceeds that of all the conquerors, all the Buddhas of the past, for wanderers in far-off places, especially the West, mindful of your loving concern for us and intentionally descending again into a family of a far distant land, Spain, we make this request. O Lama, please live long. Geshe Sherab, beloved teacher, leading your students toward wisdom and compassion, explaining through exacting discernment the steps of the stages of the path. You who are the unequaled guide, please live a long and stable life. So thank you all. It's been a pleasure and an honor to be able to speak with you these last several, maybe a couple of months. And hopefully we'll have a chance to see each other again. Some of you who are studying the low rig class, you're welcome to join in. You know, it's not exclusive to long timers. And maybe there will be some other classes I'll give occasionally for the center, but it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. And please enjoy the fruits of your Dharma practice.
Thank you, Venerable.